Hello and welcome, Xbox Nation, to this week's new episode of X-Vlog Live. I am your host, Mr. BoomStick XL, and you just saw me moments ago talking about the big news of the day that Bethesda proper has announced that both Redfall and the most anticipated IP for Bethesda Softworks in Starfield, well, they're being delayed until the middle of 2023. Today, I am very privileged to hang out and have here, making his, I think, fourth or fifth, maybe even his sixth appearance, Joe, former 343 developer who worked on, by the way, Halo Infinite and released an absolutely astounding indie game last year known as Song of Iron. Absolutely fantastic work. One of my favorites of last year, for sure. Actually got into my top 10 of all games released. And it's not just me being biased. It's, in fact, the game was really good. Joe, what's going on, brother? Welcome back.
Hey, man. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back. Tons of stuff is going on, not just the news. I'm very busy, but I'm having a good time doing what I'm doing. So, yeah, but happy to be here. It's good to take a break and just talk games.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to get into, folks. Obviously, we are this is a very small show, 60 minutes. Occasionally goes a little bit longer, 70 minutes. Today, what we're going to do is going to be broken up into two conversations. The first conversation is Joe has been nice enough to sit down not only here, but he's going to be talking about what happens to a team's mentality when this kind of announcement comes. Again, we have to remember that developers are human beings, folks. They care about their product just as much as we do. And we're going to get his point of view and perspective of what happens to the morale of the team when a big anticipated new IP, a AAA experience like Bethesda is going to be delivering in both Redfall and Starfield is announced for a delay. Is there a sigh of relief, because obviously we know Microsoft is been very forward, front facing with crunch. They don't appreciate it, and they don't want it. They want people to come in. They want them to do their 8-hour shift and make the game and not be crunch. And there's some people think that crunch is necessary. I don't. I think that you want to make the game the best game you could make, and sometimes you got to put the extra time in. But in some other places, which will remain nameless, crunch was a thing, and it was expected that you were just going to do it. And that's not the way that Microsoft does their business. And I have a strong suspicion that, with COVID still an issue, that probably has led to this delay. Maybe they couldn't get things done, and maybe at the end of the day, they felt that the product was not going to be up to standard, and they wanted to release a game that is flawless. Now, I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for anyone. I've already said what my piece. I'm incredibly disappointed, and I've said in the earlier show that the announcement of the delay, that's disappointing. I just thought it could have been announced better. And it wasn't. It was actually just kind of like, hey, here's a thumbnail. We're delayed. We're sorry, and we'll show you gameplay soon. To me, that's not good enough. You owe it to your fans to get out there and speak to us, speak to me as a consumer, as a fan, and they needed to do that, and they didn't. But listen, Joe, I want to get your perspective. But before we do, I kind of want people who don't know who I know you personally, and it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to get to know you, where I consider you to be a friend outside of the business. Give the people, just a hot idea of what your development, prior games come from. Where did you start your development in video games, and where are you at now?
Yeah, I've been thanks, Boom. I've been working for like 15 plus years now in the industry, and I started on Big Buck Hunter, which is a real fun one if you've seen it at a bar, probably.
Big Buck Hunter is a very popular game.
It's a very popular, yeah. It's like number 2 of that kind of genre of stuff. So that's where I started, and then From there, I went through MMOs at Cryptic Studios and did not City of Heroes, but Champions, which is sort of the spiritual successor, and Neverwinter Online. And then from there, I went up to Seattle to work on Halo, and I did Halo 5, Halo Infinite, and just before Infinite launched, I left and then did Song of Iron. And I was an animator at all those studios, and then was lead on Infinite for the enemies, for all the enemy character animation. And then I bounced and I did Song of Iron, which was my first solo project and indie game, and that was a blast to work on. That's nice. The very fast cliff notes.
No, it's you know what I love about what you're saying is it does paint the picture that you have worked on monster IPs, and you've taken what you've known and what you've learned and grown over the years as a developer to now want to push forward with your own game, which of course was Song of Iron, which was a phenomenal game. If you missed it, you can find that game on Steam. You can find it on Xbox. I highly recommend it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Very similar to like a Metrovania-ish kind of game, and one that was certainly worth your time and your hard-earned dollar. But what I want to talk about with you, Joe, is, from a developer's point of view, that's a point of view that a lot of podcasters don't have a chance to talk about. To get a developer on that's willing to open up about their, working for a big studio. And I'm interested. I know that you didn't work with Bethesda, but you can at least talk about it from a developer's perspective. When you have a game that you're working on, and you worked on a big game, Halo Infinite, which you see on your screen right in front of you, you're putting your heart and soul into this because you know that the community wants it, but more so, you're also doing it from a fan's point of view. You've played Halo as a fan before you worked with the studio, and you want to be a part of this legacy. You want to be a part of this history that you helped bring the next iteration of this franchise to fruition. And I'm interested to know that when a publisher like a Microsoft or Bethesda, the powers that be all decide, hey, listen, we're just not going to be able to make this deadline. We're not going to be able to make this game right without launching with a ton of bugs. What goes through the team's feeling? Is it a sigh of relief that, hey, listen, now we can kind of take our time to deliver what we envisioned this game to be, or is the air in the room taken out when a delay comes the way of something like a Starfield?
Honestly, I think that all the developers, everybody, the boots on the ground, if you will, are probably a huge sigh of relief, would be my guess. You sort of, like, any studio is built on a few layers, right? It's sort of the people making it, all the artists, the designers, all that stuff. You get management, and then you get like the studio head, and then they go to Microsoft. And I guarantee if the delay is because they needed to fix something or some like major problem like was there, that the management was like trying to not see it, and the developers were all screaming at them that they need more time to build the game the way that they're being asked to. So when you get a delay like this, it's just like the biggest relief, because you now can spend this time fixing and building things the right way. Especially like with Infinite, for example, the year delay, right? That was such a blessing to the developers, because it's so nice to just have this massive stretch of time to then build things the right way. With like Cyberpunk, where they delayed it like 2 weeks, every 2 weeks for like a year, it felt like. Like that is not good for developers, because you get asked to like fix this thing, but you have a day. So you do it the way you do it to make it work in a day, but it's going to be hacky. And then they go, oh, it's not quite working. Here, spend one more day. But you've already gone down this path. And so it's nice to get these big chunks of time so you can do the solution that takes you a week to make, but it's a way better solution. And that's just sort of like is this thing that happens across the board. So I'm definitely willing to bet that for both teams of these delay announcements, that the developers are really happy, and the management is sort of having to be forced into doing this in a way. I guess.
And that's great to hear, because obviously you want to make a game, you want the game. Nobody, and please, I'm only throwing it out there. I'd like you to correct me if I'm wrong. There isn't a developer, big AAA, indie, or anybody in between, that wants to go out of their way to put out a bad product, right?
No, of course not. I mean, there's sometimes where a situation like the studio just needs to release the game and hopes that what they kind of know is mediocre is good enough, and maybe they'll get time to fix it. That's going to happen. But there's no developer that wants to do that. Everybody wants to finish the game. So.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. Everybody wants to finish the game. Everybody wants their enjoyment to be had by all. Nobody wants to go and look at meta and see that 18 of the 22 reviews are all negative people yelling at them for not making the game that they thought that they wanted. So it's safe to say that the delay is and again, you go back to what Miyamoto of Nintendo said, right? About a delayed, a rushed, a rushed game is always bad, but a delayed game has a chance to be good, right?
Yeah.
And that's the truth. And again, I'm not going to sit here and suggest for a second that I'm not disappointed. I'm incredibly disappointed.
Oh, totally.
But and what this does, unfortunately, is it kind of puts Microsoft in a bit of a pickle, because what it does is it really opens up a hole for the remainder of 2022, which we don't know. Again, the 4 games that were expected to release in the second half of the year, which is what they did last year with a lot of their big titles, was Starfield, was Redfall, was Deathloop, which was an exclusive for PlayStation due to the licensing, and Motorsport. Which Motorsport, we don't know anything at this point, because they, Turn 10 isn't talking about it. So we don't know if that is going to be delayed. We don't know if that is going to be announced at the big show as this is the release date. It's coming in October, and they're good. But again, this does leave a bit of a hole. A lot of people want to know, Joe, like what does Microsoft do? What is it? Look, I'll put it this way: Xbox Game Pass is at the center of Xbox, right? It has become as synonymous as the brand is itself. For a multitude of reasons. Obviously, Microsoft is trying to sell a service. In order to sell a service, to keep current subscribers, you need content. Now, granted, this year they've been putting in, just loading it with content, so we can't complain that there's not enough content coming into the service. You're getting your money's worth. There's no question. But the thing that we want to see Microsoft do, at least I want to see Microsoft do, is garner new fans. Fans that might have left the brand for Sony in the PlayStation era, when Sony took the lead with the PlayStation 4 regarding hardware. They was at $100 cheaper. It was a bit more powerful. So Microsoft took it on the chin, and they lost a lot of people that were fans of the Xbox 360. They moved over to PS4. With Game Pass and all of the 23 studios that Microsoft currently has, not counting what's going to come with Blizzard and Activision once that deal is done, potentially late this year, early next year, they're going to want to garner new people coming into the platform, and you do that usually by your first party offerings. Like if Sony would to have put their services day and date, they would have garnered a ton of new people subscribing simply because their first party games are legendary. You can go back as far as 2018, 2019, 2020, and it was just year after year after year of banger after banger. And Microsoft kind of finds themselves in a bit of a pickle, because they, their biggest game, Starfield, is not there. Can you see Microsoft going out of their way to potentially make some big some deals in third party to kind of, get the shine back on them?
Yeah, it would make sense to try to, right? To try to make just like it's the console of X, Y, and Z big kind of third-party games, and get some exclusive whatever stuff to it, which is something that Sony I think has done really good at in the last couple of years, right? They're pretty good at like being the console of Call of Duty or whatever that might be, like, and that really kind of like makes it seem like it's for if the game's built for PlayStation or whatever instead of being on both. So that we could definitely play that game too, or the Xbox could definitely play that game too. And they should. I mean, it's really unfortunate that they have a hole with this many studios. Obviously, a huge number of these studios are new, but there's 20 some studios. They have to be releasing big games every year, multiple big games every year. And I mean, the delays are not fun, but I think part of their problem that they need to work on is like building games more efficiently and better so that they don't have these delays, and it's so easy to say, but being around the industry, like there's room for improvement of efficiency. There's no question about it. There's so much wasted time, and it's not like twiddling thumbs wasted time. It's just sort of like, I don't know, bad development cycles and stuff, and wasting time on bad ideas and all that kind of stuff. But
well, one of the things that have come up in many conversations, and again, I can't speak on it. I'm not a developer. I don't work for Microsoft. Management has come up quite frequently in many conversations when these kind of announcements come. I'm not saying that Sony doesn't get it, Nintendo doesn't get it. I mean, for crying out loud, Nintendo put out
where's
a thumbnail. Metroid Prime 4 10,000 years ago, and the game is still nowhere to be found. So it's not exclusive to Microsoft. No. It's not. It's all over the industry. Good friend of the program, Eric the Red 06. He says to him, Forza Motorsport ain't gonna cut it. And maybe, and again, he's on to something, and I say that, Joe, with respect, because for me, I'm a Forza Horizon guy. I'm going to play the heck out of Forza Motorsport, but I'm not a Sims guy. So that's a very niche. It's a niche ratio. It's gonna look great if it comes out this year. It's good. It's the new engine from Turn 10, which we're all waiting to see, which is going to be incredible. But it's a niche genre, not racing, but sim racing is very niche, and that's not going to be a check mark off for a lot of people. Let's see. I had someone else said something pretty interesting. It might have been a super chat. Let me just see. Actually, no. Hold on, just a second. Smokeback Official actually says this regarding our conversation. He says that's the tricky part with AAA. It's high stakes when you delay and does a lot of damage in terms of gamer confidence. And again, that's a fantastic point. I definitely think he's onto something. And again, I just want people to understand, I'm not going out of my way to dump on Microsoft. I have friends at Microsoft. Joe probably has friends at Microsoft. That's not what we're here. We're not here to do that. We are here to have an intelligent adult conversation. That a big announcement was delay of not one, but two games, and one of which, again, Redfall may not be the highest and the biggest delay because it's a new IP, and a lot of people, we know what that team has done. They've done Deathloop. They've done their last four games are all AAA bombs, and they've done one after another. So obviously.
Good bombs, right?
Yeah, and good bombs, not bad bombs. Thank you for correcting me. They've been amazing games. They've all been highly rated, meta. Yeah. They've been critically and commercially successful. So a delay for Redfall, you're like, well, they kind of, the Austin team, they know what they're doing. They have four amazing games under their belt. So you know what? We don't know what Redfall really is because it's not. It's supposed to be this big open world 4-player co-op thing. So it says that it's their biggest game yet. Okay, so we sit back on our hands and like, you know what? We'll get it when we get it next year. Though it is the Starfield that hurts more. And I say that because in the last couple of weeks, what have we seen? We've seen these dev docs. They showed the robot. This is going to be one of your buddies that's with you. We just saw last week they showed the producer that scored the music. And you're like, wow, this is going to have an epic score. This is going to be on the level of potentially Star Wars, right? It's going to be that kind of an epic, a bunch of music. So we're seeing these dev docs, and you're thinking, well, everything's good over here, right? Everything seems to be, working because, hey, they're showing dev docs. So 11/11/22, we're good.
Yeah.
And the other thing, as we know, and it was said on the show before, Todd Howard has never missed a date. If that dude gets out and he says, this is the date, well, guess what? That's the freaking date. And that's not, in fact, the case. So that's fine. It is what it is. Again, I would rather them. What we don't want, Joe, and I want to get your opinion on this, is you said that the team potentially, and again, you're just assuming because you don't work with Bethesda, but as a developer, you can relate. Yeah. It's probably sitting back in their chair and they're like, I'm sad for the people, but I'm happy for us because now we can turn around. And we're not rushing to put a game. We've been screaming because we've seen this happen. What happened, folks? Let me just pause for a hot second. Look what happened with Battlefield 2042. That is a freaking mess. That was supposed to be the return of the prodigal son known as Battlefield. And the developers were yelling at EA, please, for the love of the gaming gods, let us delay this. And they were like, no. You got to get it done. And look what happened. It's a mess.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's just a mess. Well, Jason Schreier, who everyone knows my opinion on that man, and I'm being polite because Joe's here. If I was by myself, I'd probably be cursing. He posted something this morning, and I'm blocked, so I can't read it. But a good friend of the community, Everborn Saga, read me his quote. Apparently he's not blocked, which is, again, Jason blocks everybody because he's a coward. But with that said, he said something to the effect that he had inside connections, which we know he does. And he spoke with, supposedly, again, this is his opinion, he could be lying, but he said that he spoke with people within Bethesda. And they equated the development of Starfield to... what do you call it? Cyberpunk. They basically said it was a cyberpunk situation. That's not good, folks. No. That's definitely not good. And we don't want that. You don't want the first new IP in a decade from Todd Howard and the very talented team at Bethesda to turn around and release a cyberpunk level situation, right? That's bad news. Joe, I really want to get your detailed opinion on what did a game as big as Starfield do for the development community? Like seeing how that was supposed to be. I mean, listen, let's call a spade here, Joe. CD Projekt Red, they're the darlings of the industry.
They were,
you know what I'm saying? No one had a bad thing to say about them. And then Cyberpunk happened, and they kind of were like the redheaded stepchild, so to speak. No offense to anyone that has red hair, but I'm just saying that's how they were made to feel. And it was because the game came out, and a lot of people, like my brother, played it. He got every ending, and he had no problems. He had a couple of hiccups, but for the most part, he loved it.
Yeah.
Does a game as big as Cyberpunk, and now you're hearing that it according to Jason Schreier, who is an industry insider, say that there were people within Bethesda saying that this could potentially be a Starfield. Starfield could be a Cyberpunk situation. Does that make you agree or disagree with the delay?
I mean, I think. Totally looking at it objectively, we've seen extremely little from the game.
Right.
It's coming out in, shortly. I think that's always a bad sign with games. Like if everything is good, there's tons of content to show. There's no reason that they're not putting out a trailer a month almost. I mean, that's maybe a little silly, but like
no, but you're making a lot of sense. You said something pretty interesting. No, we don't know what the game looks like because they haven't shown it to us.
Yeah, we saw the maybe game. I think it was like in-engine render, but not like live at E3 or whatever show that was that we saw that months and months ago now.
Yeah.
There's no reason to not be seeing this game, and especially a game like this, which is hundreds of hours long potentially, right? If we're following the way that they've built these games in the past, and it's a really bad sign, I think. Just in general, like it's obviously we don't have information, so we can't say for sure. But I just never understand the lack of sharing game stuff when especially a game of this caliber and this size. There's no reason to not just be constantly shown cool new footage, and we'll still only see the smallest sliver of what the game has to offer if it's this big, and so that's just like, it's definitely a reason to not get overly excited until we see stuff and see like, this is the game I'm actually excited for. It's so easy. We can't be fooled by these cinematics all the time. And it's been happening for 20 years and we still buy into it, and I understand why. And that's part of why they make those things. And, you want to get excited about it, but it's troubling that they don't show footage, and it's troubling now that there's a delay on top of that. And so you kind of like, there's 2 points against them for the most part. And it's not that the game's gonna be bad or we should be mad at them. We should be mad at the people who set a release date in the first place and probably didn't have like buy off from the studio or at least the developers to say like, is this reasonable? They just said, well, we have to release at this time, so we're setting a date. And then when it comes to it and they can't make it, they go, well, fine, I guess we'll delay. And so, they need to be more conscious of release dates, realistic release dates, or just don't say for a while. Like, it's not going to hurt Starfield to have not announced a release date until today, where they release this now mid next year release date or something, right?
Yeah.
It's troubling though. And I think like Avowed is similar, right? I don't know anything about the development of Avowed at all, but all we've seen, and this is like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, maybe, is a CG trailer. And I know people are excited about it, but we have absolutely no clue what that game is.
Yeah.
Right. And so until then, you should just pretend it doesn't exist until you see some gameplay. I mean, it's you want to be excited about this stuff, and you want to be excited for Xbox because these are theoretically these huge Xbox titles. But I think we have to start remembering like how often that doesn't work out for us as consumers, right? And we're only like buying into the studios and the corporations, if you will, by like letting them get us excited about something that doesn't exist yet. It's not fun, but it's it's reality.
No,
like
it is.
Perfect Dark, right? They made that huge announcement. They called it a quadruple A game.
Yep.
And then like the studio's like 30 people. Then they're working with they're going to add a studio to help them out. And then a bunch of people are leaving. And it's like, okay, who knows what that game is? Like, there's no way to know.
Yeah. The initiative situation, it was poor optics. This year, Microsoft, I will say this, Microsoft for the most part has been hitting on all cylinders when it comes to messaging. They've been doing a really good job of getting players excited for the brand, getting players to subscribe to Xbox Game Pass, to buy the consoles. They've been doing a great job. There's been a couple of big ones, pretty big negative stories. The one that you're talking about in particular is one for sure. The initiative situation where I felt from the beginning it was too many chefs in a kitchen that needed a bunch of cooks. And having the one chef, the sous chef, and then you obviously have everyone that works with them. This was a lot of really big, high quality, very expensive talent that ran studios on their own, coming together to sit around a table and say, okay, who's in charge? Who's making these calls? And when the calls weren't being made correctly, this is what people were like, well, this is not what I signed on for. I thought I was going to be a studio head, and I'm taking, orders from, Joe down the block. Who's Joe down the block? But, but again, I'm all about optics. And like I've said it on the other show, I give Sony the business when they deserve it. I give Nintendo the business when they deserve it. And when Microsoft makes a bit of a boo-boo, I would be remiss to do the same, and I would be not someone I would tune into or even subscribe to if I didn't give you the honest opinion on the situation. And the honest opinion is that this is a bad look. I did not like the way it was sold back to the fans as, hey, listen, we have a delay. I think it could have been done much better. I equated that, and I don't know if you saw it a couple of weeks ago. Corey Barlog, who is one of the heads of studio for Sony Santa Monica, put out a video. It's a couple of minutes long, but you know what was important about the video? It was human. It was real. The human element was there. He was out there, said, hey, folks, listen, Corey Barlog here, director of 2018 God of War. We know that we have been keeping silent. We know that we haven't shown anything, and we really want to, but the game isn't ready to be shown. And I promise you that when it's ready, you are all going to be blown away with what we are going to deliver. And he's not running God of War Ragnarok. That's someone else. But he's still the face of the studio, right? Everyone knows who Corey is. Great dude, talks to the community. And he got out there and he was front facing and he said, hey, listen, this is what's going on. I think that, in the last couple of days, we had, friend of the community, friend pretty much of anyone, Aaron Greenberg. He just, he does what Aaron does. He takes pictures. He's at a dinner. He's smiling. Who can't love that dude, right?
Yeah.
And, you had all Bethesda, you had all the big wigs from Microsoft there at this gathering. And I'm assuming, and again, I don't want to make an ass out of you and me, Joe, but I'm assuming that is where they made this very, very tough decision. With that said, now that you have everyone surrounding you, what does it take for Microsoft to get a camera crew in there, do a quick video and put it out there, and let Todd Howard get out there and speak to us? Again, we're consumers. I'm a podcaster, but I'm still a games fan. You know what I'm saying? What are your thoughts on that, Joe?
Yeah, I think, the Corey example for God of War is probably the best one there is. And it, totally gets you everything you need, right? You're adding a human element, of course. It's not great to just get a doc that tells you what the new date is or whatever for a game. It definitely feels like a quick solution to a greater publicity problem. I think there's no reason that they don't quickly record something. They could do it in a closet. It doesn't matter. It would be so much better to hear someone talk. And they can literally read that statement for the most part. But it's definitely nicer and it adds a touch. I think the only negative to it is you're kind of throwing those people under the bus a little bit, which is why if Todd Howard does it or Phil or something, it's totally fine. But having anybody below that having to do it,
studio head or above for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It can feel like you're kind of getting thrown to the wolves a little bit, but not that people jump on them for the most part, but you hope not at least. But yeah.
Well, look, let me, Dr. Dinglenut asks, who has the pet woodpecker? I did hear a tapping. It's not on this end. I thought it might have been like a key that would have been pressed down. Joe, you have anything that's maybe a keyboard is pressed?
I don't think so. I'm trying to keep muting and unmuting myself.
Okay, all right. So yeah, that's fine. That's fine. If it may be working in the background. Listen, folks, this is a podcast. This is real life. I'm in the corner of my apartment. Joe is in his home.
Yeah,
we're not in a studio, so you might hear some stuff. Hopefully, you're still enjoying the content enough to hang around. Joe, I do want to move on for the last 20 minutes. Again, folks, this is not meant to be, a 2-hour podcast. It's just me and Joe. We're talking. I had a whole other show written that we were going to get into, and unfortunately, that got scrapped because you want to talk about the hot newness, which is this terrible delay. I do want to move our eyes, Joe, to the show, which is 30 days away. There were a lot of people in the chat before that said that their hype for Starfield and Redfall were now diminished because of this news. Kay Asante, who's a good friend of the program, says that he kind of feels that this might be the prelude to some potentially big news that they're saving for their E3 or their Xbox Bethesda event, because obviously they get the bad news out of the way. They come in, they blow us away with this 11 out of 10 show. They show all this new gameplay. For you personally, do you feel that this bad news was dropped specifically to kind of just get it out of the way so they could go and do this big show? And do you feel that this announcement is going to kind of maybe is it going to detract from them showing potentially gameplay of both of these titles?
Yeah, I think they definitely would have announced it ahead on purpose. There's no reason to wait, and then they're getting the bad news out of the way, so the focus of the show can be positive. Because you can put together a 2-hour amazing show, and if you say, "Oh, we're canceling Starfield" or something, all anybody's going to talk about is that, right? And so they're trying to get this out of the way. It would be my guess. I mean, it totally makes sense to let the cycle be about it for today, middle of the week, and get on with the good stuff. It will definitely detract from, you see a trailer, like if we see a full gameplay Starfield trailer, I think it actually might be better, because now they've delayed it, so you're worried about the game. And if they show an amazing trailer, then you go, okay, no, everything's looking really good. They just need more time to finish.
Right.
So the hope would definitely be that we see we should see trailers from both of those games, actual gameplay trailers. And then that would be the way to say, like, no, these games are doing well. We just need to finish them.
Yeah.
If they hide it, that's definitely a scary thing. It would be way worse. Like if they don't show either of them, then everyone should basically throw those games out of their mind until there's a reason to care about them. Would be my sort of pro-consumer.
No. You it's funny because there was some talk in the last chat that was pretty thought-provoking for sure. With some people were suggesting, what if they don't show these games? What if we don't see Starfield, and we don't see Redfall? How big of a blow is it? I think it's a monster blow if we don't see these games. Listen, if you turn around and you show some killer gameplay from both of these, and you're like, and you walk away and you're like, yeah, that gameplay looked incredible. They actually need more time for that. Okay, you know what? It's not so bad. I'm willing to wait, because I saw, and actually Kay Asante had said something pretty interesting, that why didn't they wait for this delay announcement until after they shown us gameplay of both of these games? Because then at least with our own eyes, we could turn around and say, wow, that was incredible. Damn, I'm disappointed, but at least I know what it looks like. Now they're doing it 30 days before the show, and I think it does kind of really take the air out of the balloon, so to speak.
It's not a terrible idea, but I think what you sort of open the gates for more disappointment in a way, potentially. Like, people will see it. So say it doesn't show super well, and then they delay it. Then everybody's going to have this really big angry moment.
Like what happened with Halo Infinite.
What happened with Halo Infinite, right?
Yeah, good point.
I think it would be better if Halo said, hey, we're going to show you something. It's not done. We're already preparing for a delay. But we still want to show you because we're really excited about it, but it's going to keep getting better, right? And then you show that and you go, okay, cool. They're working on it and they've got a year more. Awesome. That trailer, that reveal, that like gameplay reveal for Halo is so much different if they said it was delayed ahead of time, I think.
Okay.
That
makes sense.
Would we have Craig? I don't know.
Listen, I'm still hoping that Craig comes back and has his own side story. I think that would be awesome.
Pretty hilarious.
To kind of bring that into fruition.
Yeah.
I would really like that. So here's my question to you, Joe. And again, we're 15 minutes from the end of the show. I want to thank everybody that's here. We have over 250 people here. I hope that Joe provided some incredible insight, and I think he did, regarding the mindset of a developer and how dejecting, but also comforting a delay could be, especially if you have, they put their folks again. They're human beings. They're gamers. They play games as much as we do, but they make experiences. So I would imagine that it's both dejecting of a delay, but also very exciting that they're not rushing to put out a product they know could potentially fail. So my last question for you, Joe, is now what? Now what does Microsoft do to fill this void? This is obviously, we had originally Redfall was slated for summer, right? And we kind of been hearing some rumblings the last couple of weeks that it might be held off until December. And then we're like, well, if it's going to be held off to December, it's likely going to be delayed. So a lot of people were not really too surprised with Redfall as opposed to Starfield. Now, Starfield is the pinnacle of Microsoft's releases for 2022, and now that's a void that needs to be filled by something. We don't know what Microsoft is going to do. We don't know if Motorsport is releasing. Now we've been hearing, and again, I've been banging this drum right along with Boxenberger. We think that Wolfenstein 3 could potentially be closer to being released than we think, because they haven't really talked about it. We know it's been in development, and that's a big first party. Castle Wolfenstein is a big IP. Compulsion Games is an IP, is a developer that has been working on this new game that has been, this is just rumors, but it's been considered a BioShock meets Uncharted with like a fantasy setting. That sounds freaking awesome to me. Is that game ready to go? I honestly don't know. I know that their slated 2023 is just packed with games. It's so many games. I don't know if they're going to be able to actually release all of the games. But they have to fill the void. Do you think that filling of the void comes from first party? Because I would imagine that Microsoft, Phil Spencer gets in front of the 21 other studios and says, "Listen, Austin and Bethesda, they're not going to be able to deliver these two games, and it's going to hurt us. We know it's going to hurt us. It's going to hurt us in the minds and hearts of gamers, and it's going to hurt us in the media, because the media is going to run crazy with this. There's 21 studios, guys, gals. What do we got? What's close? Can you guys get it out? Is that a conversation that's potentially happening right now, Joe? I mean, again, hypothetically, because
I would be pretty surprised. I think the only way that they would like move a game to fill this void is if the game was already within like a month of release or something.
Okay.
And like if Wolfenstein, that we don't know, was releasing in January, and they were like, "Oh, we're already done." The chances of that are so low. So I think if anything, what we'll see, if we do see like a game that gets announced in June and it's like for that window, it will have already been set for that. They just hadn't announced it. You'd be saying like, this studio can take their time to finish, but can you guys hurry up? Finish to fill it up and start crunching like tomorrow, and you know what I mean. So it's like, it's just not realistic, right? And unless the game was already right within that window and they just want to shuffle it, weeks or days to fit and to kind of hit the prime spot that Starfield probably held, it's not realistic, I don't think. But I think an Indy's in the chat, and he'll love this. Xbox is releasing tons of games constantly, and they're just indie games, and they're on Game Pass, which you talked about early. Like, there is a nonstop flux of games, and I think it would be great if they focused on that a little bit and reminded people that like those are games too, and
yes,
they can have as much or more fun on these fun, quirky games than they will have necessarily on these behemoth games that are destined to have trouble sometimes.
Yeah, no. I mean, the one thing that we've seen in the last couple of years, and obviously you can attest to this because you are part of that indie development community, is that they have embraced them with open arms. I mean, we've seen some of the biggest indie games in the last couple of years released directly onto Xbox Game Pass, which is a huge boost for these games that unfortunately sometimes get really get overlooked because of the big triple, the big baby. It's not AAA. It's not for me. I that's not how I am. I play everything. I love gaming, and a game, whether it has an A or an I for indie next to it, it's all the same for me. That's not for everyone, but I think you're onto something. I think that they could certainly do a little bit more promoting for some of the smaller games that are going to be big. On account of some of their games, their big games not hitting this year because of the delay bug. And folks, let's understand this. This is not the first games that are being delayed in 2022. It's a thing. It's an actual real thing that 2022 has seen. I mean, Suicide Squad by Rocksteady. That game has been in development for, my God, 5-6 years, maybe even 7, and it got delayed again. You know what I'm saying? So
it's wild.
That's life. And I'm not going to make an excuse for Microsoft on this, but again, COVID is a thing. Getting people in the same office is scary. I wouldn't take my mask off. My poor wife leaves the house with a mask on, and it doesn't come off. And she works in a senior recreation place where she's serving the senior community. And she's the assistant director there, and she don't sometimes she don't drink a sip of water because she's afraid to take the mask off. So that's a actual reality in something that has nothing to do with gaming. So just imagine if you're in this big studio, you're worried about bringing that home to your family. What's more important, working from home or your family's well-being? I'd rather work from home and make sure that my family's okay. So again, I'm not making excuses for the delay. I'm incredibly disappointed, but I just hope that they have a counterpunch for this. They've been doing so well that I am going to say I'm going to say something a little. Again, this is going to come off as a little salty, but I want to get your opinion on this. You see, this is an opportunity, Joe, for Sony to turn around and go for the juggler. And I say that because they could easily go and do something which Sony has done before. They're notorious for taking advantages of Microsoft's shortcomings with things. And this is how you share games is a very famous one, which is just dumb. But they took it and they won a generation on it. If God of War is close to being released and they're not going to put people in crunch mode and have working 18 hours a day and not seeing their families, do you think Sony takes this opportunity? This is a bit of a fumble. I'm sorry to say. That's what it is. What it is, and actually make an announcement today, maybe even later today, that hey, God of War is coming out on 11/11/22. They really go and they use this momentum of because everyone's disappointed. Everyone is disappointed. It is what it is. Two big games. Do you think they potentially do what Sony does and take advantage of this?
That would be pretty rude.
It would be rude, and Sony is notorious for that. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, they are. I don't know. They might play some cheeky thing, but I mean, God of War just delayed like a month ago, right? Like officially with the Corey's statement. So for them to come in then and say, "Hey guys, we found our new date for God of War," would be just so ridiculous because they're like doing the same thing, and so I don't know.
I have a strong suspicion that God of War is 2023, not because I don't think because again, Corey's not the director of that game. He's not. He's doing something else. He's working on an unannounced project, so he's working hard on that. It's another director that took over for that. A lot of people don't realize this, but the mocap actor who does Kratos, which is just incredible, had 3 massive surgeries last year. He came out and said, "It's my fault the game is delayed, and Sony was nice enough to wait for me to return." Which again, awesome. he put all the blame on his shoulders. So I with the way things are, I still think that it is going to be next year. And if in fact that's the case, man, this is going to be a very barren holiday season.
Yeah.
But listen, Joe, it has been great to sit down with you for about 60 minutes to get your insight from a developer's point of view. I definitely appreciate it. I want you to sell your brand, brother. You got to tell people about Song of Iron. I want people to go and check out this game. My indie game of the year for sure last year. And I know it's, but you just biased. No, it was really that good. And also, where people want to reach out to you and potentially strike up a conversation, Joe, where could they do that?
Yeah, you can find me at Song of Iron on Twitter. It's my most active social media platform right now. I'm always happy to answer questions and chat with people about games or whatever it might be, or some game devs hit me up a lot. Song of Iron was my first solo project, my first indie game. I released it in August of last year, and I'm really happy with how it did. I'm really excited about the future because, it was such a learning experience. I've been in the games for so long, but it was the first time I had done a ton of that stuff. So I really appreciate all the time you've, given me with it, here on the show and stuff. And I'm working on my next project right now, which I'm going to be talking about pretty soon. So I'm really excited about that.
Can't wait, man.
I'm dying to talk about it, but I need to wait a little longer. I'm not giving any release dates, so don't worry. I won't be delaying or anything. But I'm absolutely dying to show off. I think people will be really excited. So, but yeah, check out Song of Iron if you're up for it. And it's been great to be on the show as always.
Now, just people, what platforms is available on currently?
It's on Xbox and PC through Steam.
Yes, nice, excellent
platforms. Yeah,
excellent. Well, listen, folks, thank you so much for being here. Hopefully, you enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully, we were able to give you an insight to, what a developer's mental psyche is during these conversations and these delays. Again, the show's a little less than an hour today. I had written a whole other show, and if I tried to talk about what happened today, it would have not translated well into the original written show. It wouldn't have made no sense. So I apologize. This is kind of like a quick hit, 52 minutes, a little less than an hour, but needless to say, I hope that you did enjoy the conversation. Hopefully that, the insight that Joe was able to provide, again, especially from a developer's point of view, was insightful. I thought it was fantastic to know some of the things that he talked about. And of course, I'm going to close out today's show with something that is important to me, folks. Hopefully one day it'll be important to you. That's something that my dad taught us when we were kids. And he said, Craig, treat others how you want to be treated. Also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, and I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. We'll see you next week on the newest episode of X-Vlog Live.